think it's about the 6 o'clock hour. I would like to call the meeting of the Gilmer County Board of Education to order. And I'm going to conduct a roll call. Phyllis Starkey.
Here.
Misty Pritt.
Here.
Carl Armour.
Here.
Tom Ratliff.
Yeah.
Okay, all here and accounted for. And at this time, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on with the agenda, item 3, special recognitions. Mr. Blankenship.
I don't have anything this evening.
All
We will be having some information, I hope in the press very soon about some winners of some of the academic competitions.
right. Okay, very good. Item 4, board reports. Gilmer Calhoun Center, Mrs. Starkey.
Mr. President, Mr. Blankenship stated in our last meeting that if I did not stop doing what I was doing in our meeting, he would not recommend to the state board that our school system be returned to Gilmer County. Since I only do two things in our meeting, one is to give reports on the Career Center, 2, ask questions about invoices to be paid, I will concede to your demands. I will sit silently in your board meeting if Mr. Blankenship will recommend to the state that we get our board back. I'll apologize for not knowing that Mr. Blankenship's was a OEPA audit requirement. I must check the audit report again to see if I had missed other hidden audit requirements. Before I start my demanded silence, I would like to publicly thank Mrs. Brown for giving us back our payable invoice description. Now, board members and the media shall not have any problem finding who is being paid, what the invoices are for, and where the materials are being used. It took me almost 18 months. In closing, I will keep my option open to speak as a citizen in delegation if necessary. I'm still an American, even though I do believe I live in a state-run county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Starkey.
No career center.
What's that?
No career center.
No Career Center report.
But that's up to you. You wanted me to stay quiet, and that's what I'm doing.
It's up to the president.
If you do not feel inclined to give it, then I'm willing to go on.
No, I was told to stop doing what I was doing, and that's one thing I was doing. I'm conceding what Mr. Blankenship wanted me to do.
I didn't understand the report on the Career Center in that light.
Well, he didn't say it wasn't in that light. In fact, he didn't say what I had to stop doing.
Okay, we'll go on then to B, the RESA 7. We had a very interesting meeting, Marion County, on January 17th. I have spoken on more than one occasion about our being in a transition in our state, and the meeting that we had in Marion County was really evidence of that transition. There were 2 major topics of discussion at this meeting. One had to do with school safety, and a good deal of discussion about what counties were thinking of doing. I think there was some consensus among the group that having an officer in the school was probably a good idea. There were several ideas tossed around, and I think that as grants and monies become available to have some professional people in our schools, that this probably will be forthcoming. Mr. Blankenship, I think I'm correct, about 28 counties right now do have officers
That's correct.
available in the schools, and while many of us came from an educational background where this was not necessary, I think to ignore the need would be almost irresponsible. So I think as time passes, we're going to see more and more emphasis on the need to have someone in each school who can be there to assist if there is a serious problem. But you know, people have strong feelings about it one way or another. I personally would not want to have an armed guard at my door teaching English, but you know, I'm not the only person there, and the overall health of the school is what's at stake. The second major item that we discussed had to do with the new Common Core standards. We've been talking for some time about the fact that West Virginia statistics are all over the place, and some of them not very good in terms of our achievement with the dollars that we spend and the time the students spend and the questionable outcomes that we have. I think that we're going to see a lot of very, very rapid movement now in terms of adopting some new standards. Those of you who were in school in the late 1950s and early 1960s will have no trouble recognizing these new standards because they're content oriented. And I think, you know, beginning in the mid-60s, most of us recognized a lot of the things that came about in the way of social change, but over a period of time, we drifted away from content and into dealing with a lot of social and cultural issues. And we got down to a point where our students were simply not measuring up in terms of qualitative thinking, the intellectual challenges that we face, and that really has made education a challenge and something satisfying for most students. And so the pendulum is ready to swing back the other way. It will not be without pain because it takes a while to change habit, but the state's hitting the ground running. And the interesting thing, the RESAs are going to take the leadership role in training the teachers and principals and are going to work with superintendents and hopefully board members in educating us as to what the new standards will demand. RESA 7 is getting $12,600 to use to train trainers who will in turn train our teachers and folks in the counties. And as I understand it, Ron, the superintendent will work with these folks and schedule the various training sessions.
That's correct.
I hope that board members will also be given some oversight. I don't think we need to know the details that the teachers and principals know, but I think it's good that we understand the direction that we're taking. It's going to demand a great deal. It's going to demand a great deal of professional development. And I pointed out to a number of folks, our colleges and universities have not been present in any of these meetings. And so the current teacher training programs are really going to need to be involved if they are to turn out teachers who will be ready for the new standards. And I made a call to one or two schools, and interestingly enough, Mr. Blankenship, Friday, I ran into State Superintendent and Dr. O'Call and Jerry Jones, Provost from Marshall, and a Provost from WVU, Western Steer in Weston, and we had a little session right there. I think that's coming along. I complimented the superintendent on his efforts because I don't know him that well. I've observed him. Number one, he has the intelligence to do the job. And secondly, I think he has fortitude. And it is going to take a lot when you're bringing about change. But I was excited about RESA 7 being involved. It's not that we have to all run to Charleston for training. Our RESAs, our 14 county area, will do the training for us, and hopefully by the time we get into the next school year, we'll be into the new Common Core standards. Right now, the standards are developed for reading and language arts, English and language arts. We've known for some time that a lot of student failure can be traced to the inability of the student to read textbooks. And when I was still in higher education, we did more than one study on why students fail. And in the majority of cases, it's because they couldn't read the level of reading required for the textbooks. And interestingly enough, I've got a whole boatload of statistics which I'm going to try to write up for the press. Mr. Blankenship and I are going to collaborate on it. It's very detailed, but to have high school seniors reading at a 5.6 grade level, that's an indication of where we are. We've been floundering, and I really applaud the leadership in our state for taking this on. You'll want to listen to the governor's state of the state, I think on the 14th, because whatever it is that we're going to undertake this legislative session, I think he will very clearly delineate. I attended another meeting with Mr. Blankenship, an educational seminar for school administrators, and I gave you a copy of what we were handed out on the new standards. And it was quite an interesting discussion, and it was more detailed than what we had at RESA, but there are going to be several things forthcoming. And again, I'm going to try to write up what I understand about it, and we'll get it out in the local paper and on the free press. But I think that, again, those of us who came out of a content-oriented educational program, this is not going to be new. It's going to be new for today's students. After the end of this year, AYP is no more. It's going to disappear. I don't know where we will be with the West test. The math standards have not really been agreed upon yet. There's a little more controversy about what is or is not appropriate for grade level. In math, it was a little easier for language arts, but that will be forthcoming. And what will happen, we're going to be measuring results. The new assessment tool is going to be used in a lot of states, and it will measure what a student is expected to learn, say at the 5th grade level or the sophomore level in high school, and what a senior should learn in senior English. And you know, it's to me, it's a very practical approach. It gets around simply equating a student's education with the time spent in school. And one observation, if a 12-year-old meets all the competencies of a senior, why make him spend 2 or 3 more years in high school? And so there are some really common sense outcomes possible with these new standards, and I'm excited about them. I think we're overdue, and you know, it's going to take a little time, but we're on the right track, and I'll try to keep you informed on what I learned, and I've learned a great deal. In fact, you know, a whole day's session of this, and you know, you feel like your head's gonna explode. There's so much to it. But like everything else, you don't do it all at one time. And we're headed in the right direction with language arts, reading, and writing. And I'm just really excited about it. And I think that we're all, our society and our state and our county. I think Gilmer County has a wonderful opportunity here. We're a small county. We have a wonderful opportunity here to really shine with these new standards. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Is this going to involve somewhere in the early years of the student's life, they've got to develop a love for reading?
Definitely.
And if you can read and read well, you'll succeed in all the other things. And if you can't read and read well, you're going to struggle in any of the other subjects. And I know I can remember well when I was in school, in elementary school, they really stressed reading. Everything from Outdoor Life to National Geographic and all the library books, you know.
Well, I think in breaking this down, if you look, I took a few notes in mine. In the PK5, balancing in informative and literary text, the balance between fiction and information is going to change, even at that grade level. And then when you move on to 6 through 12, building knowledge in the disciplines, very definitely, say grade 4, it's going to be 50-50 knowledge, and then the other factors that we use. And by the time a student is a senior, the balance is going to be 30-70 in building knowledge. It's going to be content oriented.
Are they, or have they worked on comprehension testing?
I'm
Because
sure.
obviously they're going to need to.
The test is called Smarter Balanced Assessment, and yes, it will be a competency-based test. And I thought one other interesting thing, you know, we've heard about computers grading essays. Well, we were given a little handout up there, and the student wrote the same 3 words over a whole page and got a 5. So that, you know, we understand in writing an essay that it's content and an expression of thought. That's something the computer doesn't deal with, and it's really a foolish thing to think that a computer can grade an essay that represents a student's thoughts. So, you know, a lot of this seems common sense to us, and it is, and the pendulum's swinging back in that direction. And I think the students in the future will be the beneficiaries, and overall, our society will be. If you graduate from college or from high school and you can't read above 5th grade level, you're doomed. You can't read technical books. You can't read history. You can't. It goes beyond the English class. So I think there's some really wonderful opportunities for us here to see a return to not only being better informed, but also having the ability to do qualitative thinking. Anyone else? I'm sure there's going to be a lot more, and I did speak with Dr. O'Call about the need for some communication with board members, and I also feel that there needs to be a really pretty good public relations effort to let parents know and the general public know what's happening. And Mr. Superintendent, I think that's it. I could go on all night on this, but I won't. I think you see where we're headed, and we're headed there very quickly.
Heard the interruption, but we have a red Torrent vehicle on the east end of the building that is blocking other cars. With the owner of a red Torrent, please move your vehicle.
Okay, the next item, 5 trip requests.
Don't think we have any, Mr. President.
Okay. Item 6, consent agenda.
I gave you the personnel that weren't in the agenda that we sent out. And as Mr. Starkey noted, we use the new format on all bills now that we're saying, to make it a little bit more understandable to us.
Any questions, any comments? Okay, item 7, superintendent reports.
I just wanted to follow up on what Dr. Simmons talked about earlier at the seminar that we attended. On Friday, Dr. Simmons wasn't able to be there, but Senator Manchin came to pay us a visit and said he wanted to talk about school safety. And out of that discussion, he led the group to believe that there will be money, funds coming from Washington in the near future to do such things as make safer new schools, different kinds of safety technologies when we're building new schools. Also some possible money when we do some retrofit with older schools, as well as maybe some money to provide the pro-resource officers in our schools in the country. And I'm kind of excited about that because he had stated that it seemed that all sides seemed to agree that these are things that need to be done, and there wasn't really any dissension among the ranks as far as this is concerned. So I'm anxious about that, and I also, I think I indicated earlier to maybe last meeting that I'm putting together a grant request for a pro officer for the high school. That's due in March, and of course there's no guarantee of funding, but that could be helpful if the other doesn't come through. In that same vein, I'm not sure if you all, how involved the board's been in the past with crisis response plans. This is the current crisis response plan that our county is currently using, and it's pretty well the same throughout RESA 7, and the same format has to be used in all 55 counties. That's going to change in the near future. As a matter of fact, this week, Patriot Resources was a group that was used by the state. They received a contract to do audits in all 55 counties and determine your levels of need and security and such things. And they're going to be meeting with me this week to provide the documents that they have completed with reference to the observations they make in Gilmer County. Now that will lead to probably a changed crisis response plan for the county. Each school has to have one. The new plan has to be submitted and approved by the state board no later than August the 1st of this year. So I suspect that before we start school next year, we'll have a new plan for every school in the county. Along with that, just bring you up to date. I know we've had a lot of discussion and a lot of questions from the media, especially about the bomb threats we've been having. I had a call, as a matter of fact, when I was at the seminar last week. It was pretty late. The call came from the bomb squad sergeant who was in charge of the last bomb threat. And he was just wrapping up and getting ready to leave. But he had some very complimentary remarks to make about this school and about the procedure, and the fact that it's some of the best procedures that he'd seen, and that the evacuation went extremely well. Of course, we don't allow anybody back in the building until the state police and the bomb squad has completely surveyed the school and determined that it's safe for return. And one comment that I might make for the public is that I am assured by the state police, our local detachment, that arrest for bomb threats will be coming in the very near future. And that's really probably about all I can say publicly at this point. Do you have any questions about anything I've said there?
Mr. Blankenship, I had a question. I know that we had discussed options of possibly transporting the kids by buses.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, were there buses dispatched with this last bomb threat? And maybe perhaps, I don't know for sure if there wasn't enough available to transport the children, but I was informed that they were on scene, but not necessarily transported all students.
Okay, I can't answer that question,
Okay.
except the fact that we have in all situations transported our handicapped children.
Of course, yeah.
Because of the
I
safety
understand
factor.
that those, but I was under the understanding that there was multiple buses that arrived, and I just wondered, if that was something that was like a trial run, maybe just seeing if, you could locate the resources to possibly transport those kids instead of them walking. So.
Yeah, and there's no reason we couldn't do that if we had enough drivers
Right.
on scene at the time it
Okay.
happened. But that's one of the things, obviously, that we'll be looking at.
Okay.
And I suspect there'll be several upgrades and changes to the current plan, especially since the audit that we're receiving from Patriot Services this week. Many of the counties already have theirs back and have implemented their new plans and have been submitted for approval. So I'm anxiously looking to read what comments we'll get as a result of the survey. But we're going to look at it very thoroughly. Any plans, any suggestions that you all may have, now's the time to make those before we finish
That would be my
those.
suggestion. I suggested at the last meeting also, and I know that it's a matter of trying to locate drivers and the buses, but, I would like that to at least be, evaluated.
Okay. And any other suggestions that you may have, to say now's the time to make suggestions on the change. Now, I don't know if you all have a copy of this, but it's something we can't release to the public. And when we do, there's a public copy that will be redacted. in many, many instances. Obviously, certain parts of your plan you don't want the public to know anything about. The plans, however, are shared with first responders, and they are part of the planning process. So hopefully we get this to the phase that we're able to provide that to you. We can do that.
Well, these are always difficult situations. I can sit over on Leading Creek and think, well, I can catch them in a day or two, but I know that's a lot more difficult. And I realize, you don't want to accuse someone wrongly, so it takes time.
Well, it's a pretty serious. It's a pretty serious accusation, and when the arrests are made, you want to be certain that you've got the right individual or individuals, whichever it may be. So that's the reason it's taking such a long time. And I can't really reveal the procedures we're using here. We don't think we want all the students to know what we are doing, but we've had a lot of cooperation. I can say we've had a lot of cooperation from faculty, staff, and as well as some students attending. We have a large part of the student body getting fed up with this. We have been receiving assistance from them, and I'll just let it go at that. Any other questions on that issue?
I want to say that, I know this was a part of the discussion at the school administrators seminar, but I was very impressed with the professional quality of what was discussed there, and obviously school safety was a major concern, and I think there's some really good folks working on this.
Well, last week at the seminar that I attended in Charleston, U.S. Attorney Booth Goodwin was a sponsor. Had members of the School Building Authority, the state superintendent, the state board, looked like half the police force in West Virginia, as well as a great number of professional resource officers that are currently in the school. And we had especially one speaker that was just amazing. He spoke for almost 3 hours, and the audience, they weren't even ready to take a break when he quit speaking. But he's an internationally renowned expert on violence and what makes children violent toward other children. And it's fascinating, and he's a well-published author at this point also. And he's made up a tremendous number of recommendations to the state. So I suspect we're going to see a lot more talk about school safety and what we can do and change in crisis response plans and everything else. But very impressive. In fact, I bought 3 of these books before I left.
Well, I think that while it's not the whole problem, and I mentioned this to our new superintendent and some folks, I think poverty, increasing poverty, is at the root of a lot of problems. And I don't know what the answer is. I know Dr. Armour and I took a trip one day, and he asked me, and I didn't have an answer. And I think, though, that when children and families live in extreme poverty, that it influences a lot of behavior. And I hope that we can do something to make people's lives a little better.
A couple of things that this gentleman spoke about that he says he can prove, and everything I've read so far in his book indicates that violent video games, if you're a parent or a grandparent, you haven't looked at some of the video games that your children or grandchildren are playing now, you need to do that. It's astounding what our kids are doing with video games these days, as well as the issue of kids in school being bullied. That's another issue. But the video games and the violence on TV are 2 of the biggest issues with turning children. He says that we've desensitized our children to the point that they can't distinguish reality from anything else. Obviously, adults can, but I think we've got, at least in this nation, take a closer look at what we're allowing our children to play with of video games and what we let them watch on television. Those are definitely 2 of the solutions to this whole issue. But that doesn't happen overnight, and we didn't get that way overnight.
Okay, item 8, delegations. I would like to remind those of the public who wish to speak that we are an intervening county, and as such, your address should be to the superintendent And I would appreciate it if you would limit your remarks to 3 to 5 minutes. Phyllis Starkey.
All right, I think everybody knows we call it executive session. I didn't. Mr. Blankenship, while you were scolding me in executive session, you gave your opinion as the state representative. Your opinion of me was a showboat and a poor board member. I will admit, after your cutting remarks, I said, and I quote, "After what you said about me, I do not think you are the best superintendent in the world either." Mr. Simmons, you joined in with your opinion by saying that I was trying to take over the board. I was trying, sir, I cannot take over a board that we do not have at this time. However, you are correct. I do want to take back our board from the state. Sir, the board is not yours and it's not mine. It belongs to the people of Gilmer County. And if somebody doesn't want to help to get our board back, then you're in the wrong place. I know what you may be thinking, that I cannot repeat what was said in executive session. Not true. It is not illegal. Maybe not wise that a person being, maybe not wise since the person that's being discussed in executive session may take you to court. Well, since I was being the one discussed, I can sue myself. If you wish to sue me for discussing myself, please feel free to do so if you must. I'll survive. The question is, will you? As I stated in the board meeting, felt that I was being threatened, and I hate being threatened by anyone. And I want to talk about the executive sessions. Before I start talking about the executive sessions, which I'm limited, since I said I would not talk in a board meeting, I would like you to discuss the fact that why don't we take the kids to the bottom of the hill down there, use the church and the library, instead of taking them on buses up to the college. I think there'll be plenty of room, and we may check that to see if that wouldn't be the best place to take them. Let's talk about the executive session. It is required that a reason be given to enter executive session before going in, and not asking the media to turn off their camera and leave the room before a reason is being given. I was trying to explain to Mr. Ramazan at that time. If you don't believe that a reason wasn't given, watch the video. There was not one given. The law states you may go into executive session for employees, students, contracts of law, also lawsuits. Not because that you don't agree or don't like one of the board members. If you would have given your reason for going into the session to talk about Mrs. Starkey, I would have requested an open session. I'm perfectly capable, and this old lady in her 70s, to take care of myself. When it comes to two pomps, and Mr. Simmons, you're going to be real proud of me because I'm going to use an old English word, arsis. Further, you cannot adjourn a meeting in executive session. You must go back into a regular session to adjourn. Minutes must reflect what actually happened in the session. You can't put in something after it. I think Mr. Blankenship should request that the state return the board's ability to go into and out of executive sessions, along with the ability to adjourn a meeting. These suggestions are necessary to do a proper way to run a board. Not for me to have to say, we don't need to be doing that because we haven't got the ability to adjourn or do these things. Mr. Blankenship, please, give me a list of things I must do to get the state recommendation along with the things I cannot do. I have always asked legitimate questions in delegation, but I never get answers. All I'm asking is for transparency instead of silence of the public. As I told Mr. Simmons once, when he asked me if I would go along with everything the state wanted, I said I have a real problem with kissing up to people who do not care about helping children and only try to further their ambitions or importance. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Norma Hurley.
Well, I'm going to point out, although I'll probably get shot for it, just so you know, today is Mr. and Mrs. Starkey's 58th wedding anniversary. That doesn't happen very often in society, and they are to be commended. They're a wonderful couple. I wanted to talk about this SBA report, the 2013 SBA needs submissions that went to the state December 13th, or December 3rd rather, regarding consolidation of the 3 schools. And as I went through that, I determined that the new school was being planned for 395 students. Now, per the SBA website, and I'm sure this isn't real current, we had 509 students. At that time, prior to the Troy Allen Bridge consolidation, we had enough to do 2 full schools with 100%, a little exceeding 100% capacity. So it's really a shame that we're looking to build 1 school at a 77.91% program utilization. It's a shame for Gilmer County. We needed those 2 schools. As far as I'm concerned, we still do. The transportation is going to be nightmarish. I've been told consistently that we don't have transportation routes done. Yet under travel time, it reads, and I quote, "Transportation routes have been reviewed for the new attendance areas regarding state standards for travel." Those new attendance areas that I've always been told had not yet been done should, in my opinion, and I believe by policy, need to be presented to the public. It's very important for the parents to know where their children are going to attend so they can make good decisions on what they want to do. It's public school, the taxes pay for it, just like it pays for what little bit our board members get and the salary sitting here. You're employees of the citizens, that's correct. Of no one else but the citizens. Our tax dollars go to pay every nickel. And every nickel that comes in this building, and any building in Gilmer County. And I just really feel that Gilmer County isn't being given a fair shake. When I spoke with Harrison County Board of Education, I will say there was some good news. They have an annual meeting. It's been their policy to have an annual meeting with legislators. Typically over the years, they've not had great attendance. This year, our legislators are to be commended. Everyone attended, even one whose name I will not give, who had never attended before. And they were there to discuss the audit, the governor's audit, and to try to determine needs. There was a discussion, Representative Tim Miley did put in that he hoped there would be some restriction of the State Board of Education's authority, and that they would be restricted from coming in and taking over a county who had met the educational criteria and was operating in the black. I think that's very important. That's where we stand. Nothing has changed with that. And I really just want to put my voice out that I still feel that those 509 students plus are here. We need 2 schools, 2 Gilmer County schools. Transportation costs are going to skyrocket. Still hasn't been worked out per this report. It says students living near bordering counties will be given the option to attend the nearest school. Other alternatives are being explored so that all travel times and distances meet state standards. That's even more students lost to Gilmer County. It hurts our economy, it hurts our families, and considering that we have the capability of producing 2 100% utilized schools by the state criteria, I still feel it should not be too late. And per usual, Norma Hurley doesn't support it. So I just wanted one more time to say this is how I feel, and given this report, it tells you why. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 9, future meetings. The next meeting is March 11, 2013. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn? All right, we have a motion. Second? Second. Stand adjourned. Phyllis, congratulations.
I'm going to take her out for dinner, and I'm going to take her out. Okay. Well, you better take her somewhere.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Mr. Blankenship, I noticed, if I may go to the bar, it's in there, Mr. Register, that on the bar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you'll get there.
Did you get the report? This one?
Yeah.
Careful what you ask for.
In my head. Oh, yeah, that's on there.
Yeah.
It's on a copy I've got, there. If you're one of those, just, yeah, they
No.
are. It's the
Okay.
bills and stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to have a copy.
That'll make your mind go round.
And as always, if you have questions, call Kendra.